Well, it's an interesting situation, and there's all sorts of possible. Oh, I haven't told you what I'm talking about, have I? Has to do with poetry. Well, not exactly the kind of poetry that you might find in textbooks or in very special collections and so on. It's, well, it is, however, helpful to, if you'd like to do a little rhyme in some poetry that you want to write, there are many, many considerations. But for today, let's just consider, if you want it to rhyme, then let's consider the primary aspect, which of course is rhyme. And in order to think about rhyme, let's just start with some poems that have just, well, maybe two rhymes, two words, I should say, in one rhyme. For example, I tell you, I like a great deal out of this one. I've titled it Baby's Little Toe, T-O-E. It's a two-word poem, and it has rhyme. Are you ready? The title, Baby's Little Toe, Midget Digit. Or how about a very nice short poem, To My Delightful Father, Happy Pappy. Two-word poem. How about, well, then let's get to the campus situation here. And here is a poem that is a marvelous one. The Wise Scholar is the title of it. Two words that rhyme. The Wise Scholar, Prudent Student. See, the words are there for us. There's no question about it. Of course, there are other possibilities. You can take maybe one word and rhyme it with another, but put in a few other words along the way. It's I don't think this makes great poems, understand, but I think it's a good exercise for appreciating rhyme in poetry if you feel that you want rhyme. For example, a poem titled Church. Church. I took a long time writing this one here. Church. Contemplate and fill the plate. See? Think about what's going on and then make a good contribution. So then one poem here that I've titled Love Story, which shows you two words that rhyme with a few others in there, but the love story. Once regarded, but now discarded. See, there once was love between the two of them. But my favorite of all that I've been able to come up with is a poem I titled Kiss. Kiss. Yes. This is good. A nice little rhyme in it. Very simple, but a few other words along the way. Kiss. She was a beauty, and so I did my duty. Now we know what the duty is. See? Well, it can happen, and see if you might just fiddle around with little word plays like that. That could be done, and when you do realize that there is an extension of all of this, can make all sorts of what is called poetry, even though it's not just two little words. Hi diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon. You know that one? Well, maybe you can write a poem in which there is no rhyme as such, but which there is a kind of a fun point to it all. Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon. The astronaut laughed to see such fun, and he said, okay, you win. See, we would be expecting some kind of a word to go with fun, but no, just, okay, you win. That's the reverse of finding rhyme and putting in the poem. It's the awareness of there must be a rhyme, but then you don't put it in on purpose, see? Yes. Well, then we have, look, dear friends, there is this business of, remember that poem, My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, My Bonnie Lies Over the Sea? Well, they can do a little variation on that. Oh, bring back my Bonnie to me. That's the way the poem goes, a little musical version of it. But you can also, in thinking about poetry, you can do a variation of something that's already been there, such as, my body lies over the ocean, my body lies over the sea, my body is the biggest liar in the world. Because, of course, we've got that word that goes with the other words. Sometimes we don't think about it that way, but it could happen. Well, anyway, just one final little thought about poetry. Now, I don't mean that these are important poems and that they're exciting and that they're wonderful. And no. It's just getting used to the wordplay that we can have. That's what counts. Yes. Have you ever eaten soup with a knife? Have you ever gone swimming in a haystack? Have you ever heard a dog bark moo? Where's the rhyme? There is no rhyme. That's the point. But it's the fun references that can come in. Something can be done about it. After all, soup can be best eaten with a spoon, can it? If you're going to go swimming, and the best medium for swimming, well, I presume, is water, isn't it? And what are the animals that go moo? Not a dog, of course, but a cow. I didn't have to explain all those. But the point is, you can have a little fun with poetry. You can have a little rhyme with poetry. Simple little short versions that can be remembered. Not only by your reader, but even by yourself. That's it for now. Back with you next week. Well, this old retired English professor at the college here just like to think a little bit about, well, what can happen when we think about learning how to write. And I don't mean that this applies to anybody at all, but suppose somebody, I think that we can be good conversationalists one with another, but there's another possibility. And that, of course, is to be able to communicate effectively with others. Whatever the particular job you have or the activity that's your favorite and so on. And I think of, I talked once with a young man who had completed his freshman English course at a large university that was nearby. I'm not going to mention it here, but it was a large school nearby. He really liked his freshman English course. He said to me, "Oh, we talked about everything. Ecology and sex and politics, just everything. Oh, it was really fantastic." And I thought that was fine because I was talking to him as a long-time professor, even though retired. And I said, "Well, you could agree. How many papers did you write?" And he said, "Oh, well, we didn't write any. We talked most of the time." And then that bothered me a little bit. You see, in the catalog of this university where the young man had been enrolled, the course that he referred to was labeled Freshman Composition. Yes. Well, I think that we've got to do a little writing if we're going to be learning about composition. I'm not sure, of course, but it seems to be that way. Now, the one thing that concerns me is that there are such things as teaching conventions and teaching machines. I was at a convention in Atlantic City many years ago where looking at a display of educational apparatus, all different kinds of things, wherein all you do is push the button, put the cassette in, you get a feedback. It tells whether you're spelling correctly or using grammar properly or defining terms effectively. Oh, that's supposed to be good for English. And it was all you needed. All you needed. No classroom. No professor. All you needed was electricity. And I'm not so sure about that as to whether that, because I think that we've got to learn a great deal. I don't think that a teaching machine is something that can really take the place of a good teacher, or shall we say professorial machine. I don't think it can take the place of a good professor. We need to have a little bit of both, I think. And now, publishers' exhibits at many conventions, of course. You've got many videos for sale, discs and tapes that are going to be This is the way. You don't need to have a professor with you at all. You don't need to have a person. Well, this may be, but you know, I think that what counts is that for professors and teachers to be conversant in any way they can with students who have done good work that can be shared then the next semester, the next year, and so we need to learn from each other, and that the basic elements of writing are relevant, I think, for all students, whatever their backgrounds. And I can remember one time when, well, there was an issue on campus that had come up, and one of the students in the class asked if they could take over and discuss this particular campus issue. And I said, all right, you can do that. So the student took over the class, was up at the front talking about a certain campus issue at the time. This was some years ago. And then it seemed as though every time he finished a comment, he said, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. That's one of the worst phrases in our language. You know what I mean. I suppose a professor could say that about anything. Could say it, but let's get the specific words that do the job. That's what counts. And don't rely on shock words or phrases. No, but let's have the specific words that are helpful in explaining something. Get the animal out of us and see the human that's in all of us, and may we be deeply involved in what sometimes can be a rather sweaty business, I agree, of working sentences and lines and groping for precisions of good words and selections and options and so on. And it's one thing just to talk about it, but the learning, I believe, comes when one has to put it on paper and write about it. And there it is. I even do that sometimes for my programs on this station, because sometimes I don't know what I'm going to say, and sometimes you're not sure either because I haven't done a good job with it. Sorry about that, but I'm sure it can happen. That's why I got to try to do a better job, too. May we all. Back with you next week. Well, I think it's time to just make a mention at least of Mount Union College. Yeah, not in 2001, not in 1999. No, let's go back a few years. Let's go back to 1830. How about that? I know there were not too many of us that were here on campus doing good things then, but it was in the 1830s. I think we have to consider Mount Union College developed after a little village was started, and the village was known as Mount Union. And well, it just shows that the locality there may have been a little higher than other places in the state, so that's why it was named the Mount Union. Anyway, a subscription school, get that, was functioning there. Subscription school. I don't know what that means. Sounds as though you're reading a magazine, doesn't it? You got by subscription. Anyway, in October 20th, 1846, it had 6 pupils. And so the college then got underway sometime after that. Pretty exciting to go back and look through all the years. And I think of many times, well, perhaps it's the kind of thing that we still do today. They wanted all of those staff people to have advanced degrees, and in 1889 they actually halted the teaching for a while until more people had those high degrees come in to be on the staff. So just keep that in mind if there's anything functioning in this time as well. And I just wanted to mention also to you that among the degrees, there were a lot of people involved with regard to the decisions about the degrees. Orville Nelson Hartshorn was in charge of Mount Union for about 40 years. I guess that's why they have the street named Hartshorn right by the school now, huh? Well, in any event, all these things are important to keep in mind for Mount Union. And you think about it in terms of what all of this means. We're learning and we're understanding, and yet we can have some fun with learning also. I think of Mark Twain and some of the silly things he said about, learning and understanding. He said, never put off till tomorrow what you can put off till the day after tomorrow. Which, that may be what some students may think from time to time. Put it off for another day, too. It can all happen, there's no question about it, of course, but we just have to kind of figure out what's the best thing for us. And it's true that people like to have some spin-offs that are not just exactly ordinary. That's, for example, you might have a theme that you write that's just totally different than what the class had been talking about. Well, way back in, I don't know, it was years and years and years ago, I'm not sure how many. I think it was to be maybe 30 years ago, 25 years ago. Anyway, there was a new book out, yes, called The Phony Phone Book. Somebody did a nice job with that. And then, of course, at the same time, there were other fine, contacts, let's say, with one to another. And I suppose it's not working out too well. Don't just say this is miserable or having a misery. I like the student who said misery is when you put a dime in the pop machine and the pop comes out, but the cup doesn't come down. And after the pop stops, down drops the cup. So be it. Well, Merry Christmas. Oh, no, I'm early. I must be early. Well, I could be late also, couldn't I? Well, that's the way it is with putting in papers for class. You could just say, yes, this is an early paper for next semester, even though it's in the last week of the present one and you're only 6 weeks behind in doing it. Well, I'll try not to be that far behind with you next week. Same time. Hope to see you then. Well, I hope that you'll hear. It's good to have a laugh now and then, and I just think of, you know, that there are organizations that are dedicated to humor. There's a conference of humorists, for example. The conference has all sorts of, for example, last year, it was in April, it was held at Saratoga Springs, New York. It was titled The Positive Power of Humor and Creativity. And that's a pretty good thing. Some of the people who were there said, I never laughed so much in all my life. And added, the jiggling of my inside was certainly good exercise. So be it. Another person said about the meeting the previous year, I love to laugh and smile and meet joyous people. I came all the way from Hawaii, and it was worth it. What was worth it? The humor, the fun. And do you know that there are those conferences dedicated entirely to humor? And the role of creativity in humor also. That's true. And we have, I think everybody has the opportunity to help themselves laugh a little more. You might want to go to one of these conferences sometime. They're about 3 or 4 days at a time. Here are some of the topics. For example, humor and creativity, the featured presentation, Drawing Out the Best in Yourself and Other People in Your Organization. That's right. And it tells you how to get the latest ways to multiply your visual and verbal intelligence. My goodness, see? Just like Mount Union, isn't it? You got to keep learning. Well, there's all sorts of good conversations. Clowns on the round, belly laughter for couples, and backwards from perfect. Those are just some of the topics that are used. We also have, if you go to a conference on humor, you may well have drawings. Yes, that can well be where you see how it can be in sketches. All sorts of good things. It's not cheap to go to the conference, for example, last year, the Humor Project Incorporated, sponsoring it. To be there, it was about a week, to be there, $375. That is, if you sent the money in ahead of time sufficiently. Now, if you sent it in just a day or two before it started, $425. So, about a 3-day conference, I believe. But it's well worth it if you are interested in humor. And I would encourage you to consider, not that you have to go, I don't mean that, but that to realize that people who wish to be genuinely funny may have a lot to learn. Just as, well, all at Mount Union, all the students, whatever your topic is, the degree is going to be in what area. You're learning about it. And that's what counts. I think it counts very much. So the Humor Project, 3-day session, or here's another one, the annual International Conference on Humor and Creativity. How about that? Yes, that's at Saratoga Springs, New York again. And it's just, well, it's something for us all to think about, of how we have a lot to learn about humor, as well as other things. Well, I'd like to just suggest, with our time together today, just a few simple little things, but a very... I love the wordplay in this one. Did you know what Mrs. Santa Claus considered Christmas mistakes? And the answer, Santa flaws. Yeah, Santa makes the flaws. And you know what? Oh, divorces are not pleasant situations. I realize that. I don't mean to make fun of them, except that somebody came up with a good statement of what is the main cause of divorce. And in fact, this person finally said, what is the only cause of divorce? You know what it might be? The only cause of divorce. Marriage. I thought that was pretty good. Well, then two others here today that I'd like to share with you. Yes, if two people marry, of course, you can say that the groom rules the roost. That's right, the groom, he rules the roost. But as somebody else pointed out, okay, the groom may rule the roost, but the bride rules the rooster. That's good word usage, too. Finally, this is not a very nice one, but it's just for fun, of course. We're talking about golf, and you want to get good scores or something like that. And suppose somebody's asking the professional or somebody who knows a lot about golf anyway, and you ask him, how do you improve your golf score? And the answer is, well, add 3 plus 5 plus 4, and you get 9 instead of 12. That's how you get a good score. Yes, well, enough of that, of course. It's the kind of thing that we should be decent and we should be honest, shouldn't we? But we can still laugh a little bit at some of the things like that. I hope you can. You might even consider laughing because you might even have to listen to this program next week at the same time. I don't know why you would have to, unless there's a radio someplace around that has only one station. Well, if that's the case, is it a radio station or a railroad station? I could see possibilities both ways. Back with you next week.